really starts everything that I do really starts around this statistic that 95% of innovations that are brought to market fail. And isn't that really scary? That means that for the group of people that we have here, a lot of the innovation ideas or clients that you're working with, whether it's your own innovation company or not, will end up here. And so my objective and my passion is really being able to create these live events, create this community, so I can help you be part of that 5% that succeeds, or we can even start moving the needle, right? With this kind of shared learning opportunity. So this is truly a cautionary tale from the zombie graveyard for Pear Therapeutics. Anybody not know who Pear is? Are we all familiar with Pear Therapeutics? If not, I'm going to give you some context, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So Pear Therapeutics is a digital therapeutics company that was founded in 2013, so about 10 years ago. It was founded by Dr. Corey and Dr. Yuri, both medical physicians in different fields. And at the time, they were pioneering digital therapeutics, was a completely new category in digital health. Out of Boston. And these are just some of the facts around the company that I think is going to give us some really great context for our discussion today. And some things that I think that indicated that they were doing a lot of things right and a lot of things well. So they had 23 different VC firms that invested in that organization. They had 3 FDA cleared products. They had over 40 clinical studies that had been published in some of the most reputable peer-reviewed journals. When you think about target market, they weren't really going after a really tiny market. Their addressable market were 35 million that suffer with substance abuse or opioid abuse. And then they had a strategic partner that, really all signs indicated they're moving in the right direction. They strategically partnered with Novartis and Sandoz, helping them with, Novartis was an investor of theirs, helping them co-develop some of those technology solutions, co-promoting it, and probably most important, at least at the time, was helping them with market access. How are they going to actually secure paying patients in their platform? A lot of times health innovations will really struggle with user experience, but they didn't. All of the studies indicate that they had a really incredible user experience for the patient. And that they were really pioneers. They made a lot of regulatory progress around digital therapeutics. They opened up a public policy discussion that really is still going to chart the course for all of the other digital therapeutics companies that have come after them and that will continue to come onto the marketplace. And so they had 3 products, just to give you a little bit more context. In 2017, they launched Reset, which was for substance abuse. 2018, they launched Reset O, which was specifically for opioid addiction. And then Summaris, they launched in 2020, which was for insomnia. All good things, right? Indicating they're on the right track. So some of you may be familiar with digital therapeutics and maybe some aren't. Just to kind of give you a little bit more context, what you see here on the screen is they had a mobile app for patients to be able to help them stay off of the drugs that they were on. And then they also had a physician web-based interface that was for physicians and clinicians to be able to track and monitor those patients that they were caring for. They had FDA clearance, so this was something that required a prescription from a physician. And all of this is software that is being used for a medical intervention based upon clinical evidence. So one of the things that I hear often, either with clients that we're working with or guests on my video podcast show, or even folks that I'm talking to in the community is, if I just get that funding, the rest is I'm going to be sailing into the sunset. But if you look at this here, Pear Therapeutics raised over $400 million in capital. So they didn't have a capital problem. And it wasn't from just a couple of investors. They had a number of different investors here. They even went IPO in 2021. And when they went IPO, or right after that, they were evaluated at $1.6 billion. And so I think it is just complete for a lot of us, it completely took us surprise to see them file bankruptcy just last month. Really surprising. So funding wasn't the problem, right? And then I kind of wanted to pull out some quotes from the CEO of the company, just for you can kind of get a feel for what was the CEO's mindset. So these quotes were in 2019. So, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And what I thought was really interesting, he was showcasing Pear Therapeutics at the JP Morgan conference. Everybody was really excited about it, kind of taking us through where his perception of the industry went, again, creating a whole new category that didn't exist. And so he takes us through it, the idea of like, in the beginning, people had no idea what we were talking about. Then they started to kind of acknowledge the idea, but they didn't believe it was possible. And then they believed it was possible. And now all of a sudden they were at a point where they started to think that it was their idea. Kind of just shows you the cycle that innovations happen. And you can see, at this point, they're raising probably about $135 million in revenue. And their focus is on, developing proof points, right? Developing more evidence, making sure that they have a path to reimbursement, which is really important. I thought it was also interesting, this comment here is that, there's no reason why a clinician should not be using the product. I can't tell you how many times this conversation happens, right? We get so passionate about those innovations that we dream up that it just seems like a no-brainer to us that our target audience, there's no reason why they shouldn't be using this. Then I want to highlight just a couple of quotes from the market and the investor world, because again, kind of all things kind of indicating that they were on the right track all these years. Definitely, Pear Therapeutics was building a new category within digital health. And they acknowledged that, their challenge was not just really developing the product. They developed high quality products that were cleared by the FDA. And they had very effective products. They had 40 plus peer-reviewed articles that were published, right? So they had the evidence there. But how they were going to distribute and gain reimbursement in a very, very scalable way, that was the main challenge. That was the crux of their commercialization strategy. So I want to take you through in the next couple of slides, just these indicators of Pear's fate. So as you see this, I'm going to just take you through, I'm not going to go through 10 years, right? Because there's so much, but I just paired this back into, no pun intended, or maybe 2019. We're going to kind of just start with 2019 and how that journey went. And some of these things that you'll see here are huge milestones when you think about, wow, if I could just do this in my business for my innovation, I would be, fast tracking to scalability here. But, this is when some of the real good stuff started to happen. So in 2019, Express Scripts, lo and behold, PBM actually comes up with a digital health formulary. CVS Health comes up with a program. It's called the Vendor Benefit Management Program. And this was kind of another way that PBMs were creating a path to market access, a path to reimbursement. That one of the things that started to kind of negatively impact them was this partnership that they had with Novartis. Novartis and Sandoz actually split up, and Novartis decided that they were not going to be partners with Pear Therapeutics. They wanted to really focus on their core business, and actually they ended up, innovating some additional digital therapeutics on their own. But then you start to see that they started looking at other categories within their offering. So not just the opioid or substance abuse or even sleep insomnia, but then looking at GI products and developing strategic partners with those people. Also getting the FDA approval for the insomnia Summaris product. you got to see how how they go through the pandemic. The pandemic actually didn't negatively impact them at all. Like a lot of healthcare innovations, it started to kind of accelerate it, right? So the FDA started okaying and loosening some of the regulations around digital health. And so this opened the door for them to have a little bit more success. They strategically partnered with Remedy One, which was another PBM. So again, kind of creating those pathways to payment and reimbursement. Announcing a lot of peer-reviewed clinical evidence, inking deals with being able to integrate more biomarkers beyond the pill into their platform that give them that evidence to really be able to show that they were impacting patient outcomes. And then they go public in 2021. And then they start, partnering with Mass Health. Mass Health decides that they're going to actually cover the Pear Therapeutics solution. So again, all of these indicators, man, things are going really well. They raised $400 million in capital. They start to make progress with CMS covering their digital health for prescription. And then all of a sudden you start to see things kind of get a little shaky, right? They announce massive revenue uptick in Q4 of 2022. But then just in June of 2022, their shares rise. And then July, they're doing layoffs. And then in August, they're scaling back and they're laying off more of their workforce. And then they're trimming back more workforce. And then you've got this another positive win peppered in there in January, just a couple of months ago of this year, where they got Florida Medicaid to add them to their drug list, which is huge, an incredible feat. And then lo and behold, March, they're announcing they need a lifeline. April, they're filing bankruptcy. And this just really blows my mind, right? When you think just 2 years ago, they had a $1.6 billion valuation, and just last week, a couple of weeks ago, they ended up selling off their assets for $6 million. Wow. Wow. You think there's some lessons for us to learn in this story or what? So what the happened, right? What happened here? So these are some things that I pulled out. Honestly, I think that there really are even a lot more lessons here, but I realize that I don't want to take our whole hour, right? I just want to kind of set the tone for the context, give you some key insights to consider, and then tee us up for our breakout conversations. But these are the ones that I pulled out that are out in the public, and then also some of my own interpretation of things. So one, they really set ambitious goals after they went IPO. As you can imagine, now all of a sudden you're a public company, you're trading on the NASDAQ, and you've got a lot of high expectations upon you. So they said that they were going to generate $125 million in revenue in 2023, and that just put a lot of pressure on them, a lot more pressure, and they couldn't perform. Another huge problem is their high burn rate. They were burning through cash, and they just weren't able to raise enough money to sustain their operations, which again is mind-blowing because they raised over $400 million. So how much more money would they have needed to raise? So obviously they were burning through some massive cash. Poor execution. So this is one that really jumps out to me, is that they built out a direct consumer and a health care, like medical office sales team before they even had any reimbursement contracts. So you can kind of see why they might have been burning through so much cash. Competition. So because they were creating a new category in digital health, it's very expensive and it takes a lot of time to actually start to generate some uptick. And so while that was happening, they had a lot of new players that came into the market that were able to offer their solutions at lower cost that really kind of shook things up for them. One of the things, though, that I think really stands out, as we all know, is that healthcare is a multi-sided market. It's one of the things that we face that a lot of other verticals don't, is that it's a very complex sale. Very rare is it a single buyer that's influencing that entire buyer process. So, when they were, and I don't think this was even really considered in their go-to-market strategy, that, they needed to make sure that there was a plan for driving providers to actually be able to adopt the solutions and utilize it, and influencing payers with some of the real world impact that was happening with these novel solutions, and they weren't able to accomplish that. Payers. So we talked about this actually in the product market fit mural that Paul just shared with us. So they were really missing this health economic data, this budget impact models, the real world evidence with large numbers. So they had some clinical evidence, but they didn't have what was needed to actually make the case for value to payers. And then when they went to direct consumers, their pricing strategy was a complete misalignment. It was very expensive. So the patients that they were targeting were in no position to afford how expensive those Pear solutions were. So they kind of tried to almost take their B2B strategy and then, probably out of desperation, going direct consumer to see if they could gain some traction there. And it just didn't transition. It would really need to require a whole different strategy and plan. I think that they also they suffered with shiny opportunity syndrome. So although they only had 3 products that were FDA cleared, they actually had over 50 products in their pipeline before they had actually proven the commercial viability of the 3 that they had FDA clearance on. So trying to be all things to all people is never a winning strategy. And then last but not least, is little to no value to the prospective buyer. So many times I'm working with people and they're really, really passionate about the cause and the patient and what the real benefit and impact to the patient. But we always have to remember that if we don't have value to whoever is actually paying for the solution, we're going to have a losing strategy, and we can end up just like Pear. So there's a couple of things that I think are really important here, that they are missing the diffusion of innovation model in their go-to-market strategy. They're missing a bowling pin strategy, and I'll talk about a little bit this more in the future, but I'm anxious to hear what we end up uncovering in our breakout sessions. And I just want to leave us with saying that, don't worry, it's not all gloom. This is an incredible case study for us. There is so much to learn, so that way we can circumvent our own failure. And so Paul, I'll transition it to you to tee us up into our breakout sessions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Roxie. You've actually got my head spinning. I think it's so interesting that Pear created a new category, and typically you want to move as quick as possible in other markets. But to your point, when you're managing 3 different potential clients, things can get a little wonky. So really, really interesting, really fascinating, folks. I hope you were taking notes here today. I was reading through the chat. It looks like David Lee worked with Pear. So David, if you don't mind, could I pull you up and maybe give just we don't need to go very long on this, but just give some thoughts on this.
Sure. So Dr. Roxie, you nailed it. I would say 95% of what you said were the things we were saying while we were part of. So I worked through a public affairs firm in California to help set up so we worked on Reset and Reset-O, kind of the substance abuse piece and opioid use piece. And, we kind of created California-based coalitions of nonprofit groups and, tried to get the education going, worked a lot on the reimbursement. But, for us as the staff that was working on this, one, like having that enormous pipeline, as well as I think the thing that I would add to your talk that was apparent to us was that they came from this, like with the Silicon Valley mindset, you might say. So they thought like, hey, once we have this, FDA is going to take a week, the reimbursement guidance is going to take 2 weeks and we're all done. And we're like, this is a very long process. This is nothing, no matter how well you're aligned, that you can control. It takes very incremental, unfortunately, change.
Yeah.
And then that pipeline piece as well, where I think there were a lot of, as you said, a lot of shiny objects, and just they took much more than they could chew. And then I think the other thing is they thought that the FDA clearance was going to be such a game changer, but they were in a sense competing against, you know, regular apps that you see in the App Store, and many patients couldn't really distinguish between, or, you know, say that, hey, this FDA cleared product is so much better than what I can find on the App Store. So from a kind of cost perspective, and also reimbursement, where a patient might say, hey, I only have to pay $9.99 for this app. And, you know, also having to educate the practitioners, because obviously there's a huge, you know, gap in the number of healthcare professionals. And, you know, the messaging was like, hey, you're going to be able to manage many more patients. But then also there were people that had, you know, technology issues that they couldn't get access to. And then obviously the reimbursement issues on top of it. So there were a lot of pieces that kind of led to, and I had stopped working with them before kind of the death knell. And as you said, it happened so fast. It was like, you know, I was following lots of digital health news, and then one day I remember going on LinkedIn and it was like, boom. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, definitely it was an interesting ride.
Well, that's really interesting too, because you're right. So many times we're looking at that competitive landscape as just the one or two people that are direct competitors, and not really taking into consideration those substitutes or alternatives, or even like the do nothing alternative.
Right. And even the insurance companies are like, hey, yeah, we'll reimburse you $10 for this app, but we're not going to pay, you know, what the retail was for, you know, the product. And, you know, it was a much different beast than just, you know, something that's like, you know, that would be very inefficient, that, or, you know, maybe not that effective, but kind of a way for the insurer to check the box. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow. Excellent. Thanks, David. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot there.
Of course.
And appreciate your insights into this. Now, we get to dive in and get our hands dirty a little bit, folks. The thing that, you know, Roxie, as you were speaking, I was thinking about is, in the river guiding world, we have this saying called go slow to go fast. And so what you have to do is break down the tasks that need to happen. And if you can do that effectively and organize people effectively, you actually end up moving a lot quicker. This happens a lot in rescue situations. When shit hits the fan, you have to go through your sequences. And so that's my biggest takeaway. But what we're going to do now, folks, is we're going to get you ready. We're going to do Eddie out. So our Eddie out topic today is, what from the Pear case study do you see as a similar risk to your business right now? What can you do to overcome it? So I want you to focus mostly on, and Dr. Roxie, would you mind pulling up that slide that's what the F happened? That would be great, because I'm going to give you all some time to think about this in your own business. But if we're looking down there at the chat, I want you to write down, and again, I'm going to put this chat at the bottom. Each of you are going to, it says 6 minutes. We only have time for 5 minutes per person. We're going to go in alphabetical order, but I want you to just share with your group what from this slide, or what from Dr. Roxie was sharing, is the biggest risk to your business. Maybe something that sounds maybe a little similar. So take the first minute of your 5 minutes to share that challenge. And then the rest of your group can kind of help you with that. So if you're listening to someone's, you know, perspective, and they might be like, I think we actually do have overambitious goals right now, then someone might chime in and say, this is how we forecast. This is how we focus on this. So you're going to be with your peers, and they're here to help you. So 5 minutes per person. Take the first minute to share what parts of the Pear case study sound familiar, then allow your peers to collaborate to help bring perspective. So I'm going to give you a moment right now to look at this slide and think about, write down maybe some of the similar things that you heard. And then we're going to be getting you ready for your breakout rooms in the meantime. So please take about a minute to do that. Okay, so you should have a pretty good idea. I'm going to stop the recording.